The first report came from a place most maps forgot to label. Kestrel 9, a farming moon wrapped in pale rings and dust storms, where the days were long and the nights smelled like wet soil and machine oil. The kind of world people chose when they wanted silence, when they wanted to raise children far from war stories and crowded skylines. The message hit the Terran Protectorate's emergency relay at 3:11 ship time. Subject: missing miners. Council vessel present. Request immediate response. Commander Elena Voss read it twice without blinking. Not because she didn't understand, but because her mind refused to accept the shape of it. Council vessels didn't present on human farmland. They didn't land, didn't interact, didn't even acknowledge most human colonies unless there was paperwork involved. She thumbed the attachment open. A shaky video, a nighttime field under floodlights. A sleek, black ship hovering low, silent as a held breath. Figures moving beneath it, tall, angular silhouettes in reflective armor. No insignias a human database could identify. And then, small shapes. Children. Some walking as if sleepwalking. Some carried. A woman's scream sliced through the audio, raw and animal, then cut off as the camera jolted sideways. The footage ended with the lens staring up into the ship's underbelly as it rose, the lights beneath it turning the soil into molten gold. Elena's knuckles went white around her tablet. She'd been awake for 17 hours already, the kind of day that came standard with command. Budget triage, patrol rotations, a diplomatic complaint about a mining corridor. Normal problems. Manageable problems. This wasn't manageable. This was a line. Her aide, Lieutenant Rafik Imoni, stepped into the command pit with a cup of cooling coffee. He took one look at her face and stopped mid-step. "What is it?" he asked carefully, like he didn't want to startle something dangerous. Elena turned the tablet so he could see the title. Kestrel 9, Missing Miners. Rafik watched the video in silence. When it ended, he lowered his gaze as if the floor had offended him. "That's a council ship," he said. "Eliminating unlikely possibilities." Elena's voice came out flat. "Yes." Rafik's jaw flexed. "They don't have jurisdiction over internal colonies." "They do if they pretend they do." She pushed the tablet away, as though it could burn her. Pull the last 30 days of council traffic in that region. Anything with the phrase welfare, integration, medical, or their favorite euphemism, stabilization. Rafik's fingers danced over his console. On it. Elena stood, moving toward the panoramic window overlooking the hangar decks below. Fighters sat in neat rows like sleeping teeth. Men and women in grease-stained coveralls moved between them, checking seals, loading fuel. A quiet choreography of readiness. Peace always looked like this, routine. Order. A world pretending it was permanent. Her comm chimed again. This time it wasn't one colony. It was 3. Then 7. Then 15. Larkspur Station. Infants removed from nursery wing. Marrowline habitat. Council inspectors boarded. Miners missing after departure. Shale Ridge. School transport intercepted. Children redirected. By sunrise, the Protectorate's intake servers were choking on incoming distress packets. Elena felt the old reflex in her chest. Years of discipline pushing emotion down into a place it couldn't interfere. She'd trained to see crises as puzzles, identify the edges, locate the leverage point, solve. But the footage kept replaying in her mind, not as data but as something visceral. A child's bare feet swinging above dirt, carried like cargo. She forced herself to breathe. Then she opened a secure channel to the only person she trusted with her unfiltered voice. "Admiral Kwon," she said. The hologram formed above her desk, Admiral Minute J. Kwon, grizzled, eyes too sharp for his age, wearing the expression of someone who already knew they were about to lose sleep for the rest of their life. "Commander," Kwon said. "We're seeing it too." "How many?" Elena asked. Kwon exhaled through his nose. "Confirmed. 212. Unconfirmed. Thousands." Elena's throat tightened. "How?" "Council invoked a protective custody clause," Kwon said, and his mouth twisted around the words like poison. "One of their old emergency statutes. Says they can remove minors from unstable developmental environments if a species is deemed a future threat. Elena stared. We're a future threat. Kwon's eyes hardened. Apparently we've become inconvenient. Elena's mind flashed, uninvited, to a memory she rarely allowed herself. A different corridor. A different time. Her brother Thomas at 13, too skinny for his uniform, grinning as he tried to look brave. The council had called it a relocation initiative back then, voluntary participation in a multi-species educational opportunity. Her parents had fought it. They'd lost anyway. Thomas had walked onto the transport ship with a backpack and a forced smile. He never came home. No death certificate. No answers. Only the sickening calm of a bureaucracy that didn't consider human grief worthy of explanation. Elena swallowed hard. Where are they taking them? Unknown, Kwon said. But we've found a pattern, routes converge toward the core. The core. The Galaxy Council's polished heart, where laws were spoken like divine truth. The place they pretended was neutral while they decided what species was allowed to become strong. Elena's nails dug crescents into her palm. Kwon leaned forward. You need to come to Terra. Now. We're convening a closed assembly. No record. No external comms. Elena didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. The secret chamber beneath Terra's orbital ring smelled like recycled air and old metal. It had been built during humanity's earlier, paranoid centuries. Before treaties, before the Council's peace, when humans still believed threats wore obvious faces. Now the threat wore robes and spoke politely. Elena entered to find 27 people already seated around a long table. Fleet commanders, intelligence directors, legal strategists, one exhausted-looking representative from the Colonial Union. Faces lit by holographic projections of red dots scattered across human space. Each red dot was a missing child. A murmuring hush rippled as she took her seat. Admiral Kwon stood at the head of the table. Behind him hung a single frozen image, a council ship lifting off from a playground, swings still rocking beneath it. Kwon spoke without ceremony. The council has seized our miners under authority they are abusing. Their justification is preventative stabilization. Their real intent is control. A Colonial Union delegate, Councilwoman Myra Halden, slammed a palm on the table. That's kidnapping. Yes, Kwon said simply. A legal strategist, Dr. Ansel Price, adjusted his glasses with trembling fingers. We can file protest through official channels. Demand arbitration. Elena couldn't stop herself. And while we file, they erase our children. Price flushed. Commander, there are protocols. Protocols are what they're hiding behind, Elena snapped. She heard her own voice sharpen and forced it back down. Sorry. But listen to what we're actually saying. The council crossed our borders, took our kids, and expects us to argue about clauses. Silence followed, heavy, uncomfortable, because everyone in the room knew she was right. Intelligence Director Soto flicked a control, shifting the projection to a new feed, an audio transcript recovered from a council comm relay. The translator rendered the alien voice smooth and almost gentle. Human juveniles exhibit abnormal attachment behaviors. Excessive protective aggression is statistically linked to destabilizing militarization. Recommendation: remove juvenile cohort for corrective integration. Someone inhaled sharply. Attachment behaviors. Myra Halden whispered. They mean love. Elena stared at the transcript until the words blurred. Then she looked up. Where are the children being held? Soto hesitated. We traced 3 transports to a facility near the core. Designation: Aurelium Vaults. Purpose classified. Security extremely high. Kwon's voice dropped. We sent an inquiry through diplomatic channels. The council replied within 6 minutes. He nodded to Soto, who pulled up the response. It was short. Surgical. The juveniles are safe. Non-compliance will be interpreted as hostile intent. Peace is maintained by preventing predictable threats. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear. Clarity. They're not negotiating, she said. Kwon watched her closely. No. Elena's gaze moved across the table, meeting one face after another. People who had sworn oaths, who had spent careers avoiding war because war was supposed to be behind them. Then we stop pretending this is paperwork, she said. This is a hostile act. Myra Haldon's voice shook. If we respond militarily, they'll call us barbarians, Elena finished. Yes. They'll call us monsters for doing what any species with a spine would do. She leaned forward, keeping her voice steady because if she let it rise, it would become something sharper than command. They built 15,000 years of peace on the assumption that no one would dare inconvenience them. They stole our children because they believe we'll swallow it. Rafik, seated behind her, spoke quietly. What do you want to do, Commander? Elena closed her eyes for half a heartbeat and saw the Kestrel 9 footage again, little feet swinging. Silent ship. Mother screaming. She opened her eyes. First, she said, we find exactly where they are. Kwon nodded. And then? Elena's answer came without drama. Without flourish. Because it wasn't anger anymore. It was a decision. Then we bring them home, she said. Quietly, if we can. Her hands flattened on the table. And if we can't? The room held its breath. Elena's voice stayed level, but every syllable carried weight. Prepare the fleet. The Aurelium sphere did not drift through space so much as own it. From a distance it resembled a planet made of architecture, layer upon layer of luminous rings, terraces, and floating annexes stitched together by bridges of light. The structure turned slowly, like a jeweled eye watching every shipping lane that dared pass near the core. Commander Elena Voss stood on the observation deck of the Terran diplomatic cruiser UTP Resolute, hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid enough to pass inspection by any parade marshal. The view was breathtaking, but it inspired no awe in her. Only a bitter thought. They built a palace and called it peace. Rafik Imoni approached quietly, a data slate tucked under his arm. We're inside their approach corridor. They granted docking rights. They granted permission, Elena corrected without turning. As if we're guests entering their home. Rafik hesitated. Our escort drones are in position. No weapon systems active, per the truce. Elena finally looked at him. We're obeying the rules because our children are somewhere inside that machine. Remember that. He nodded once, jaw tight. Yes, The comm panel chimed. A smooth synthetic voice, council protocol, filled the deck. Terran vessel UTP Resolute. Maintain velocity. Submit to scan. Any deviation will be interpreted as a breach of neutrality. Neutrality. Elena watched the sphere grow larger, its surface glittering with traffic like a living city. Scan away, she murmured. You'll find nothing but anger wrapped in manners. The ship shuddered slightly as invisible fields passed over the hull. A moment later, the docking clamps engaged with a heavy thunk that vibrated through her bones. The airlock lights shifted to Council Blue, an invitation that felt like a leash. Elena stepped into the passageway with her delegation. Rafik, 2 diplomatic officers, 1 security detail, unarmed by treaty, armed only with body language and the memory of stolen names. The airlock cycled open. The first breath inside the Aurelium sphere smelled like sterile ozone and polished stone, as if someone had cleaned the air to remove the possibility of human sweat. A council attendant waited on the other side. Tall, slender, skin like pale metal, eyes too dark to read. Its robe shimmered with faint geometric patterns that moved when it breathed. Commander Elena Voss, it said through a translator collar that made its voice sound gently amused. Welcome. You may refer to me as Facilitator NYR. Elena's gaze flicked past it. The corridor was wide enough for vehicles, lined with glossy black panels and gold filigree. Silent drones floated near the ceiling, watching. How many children have you facilitated today? Elena asked. Enwar's head tilted, as if she'd spoken in a quaint dialect. Your emotional framing is noted. The Council appreciates cooperation. I didn't ask what the Council appreciates. A pause, fractional, but real. Then Enwire gestured with an elegant hand. This way. They walked. The deeper they went, the more the sphere revealed itself as an organism of control. Every doorway scanned them. Every hall had vantage points with no visible guards. Even the lighting seemed engineered to keep visitors slightly disoriented. Bright enough to see everything, soft enough to blur shadows. Rafik leaned close. "They're funneling us," he whispered. "Single route. No branches." Elena kept her expression neutral. "They want us to feel small." The corridor opened into a cavernous atrium where the ceiling disappeared into a haze of light. Suspended above them floated a slow-turning hologram of the galaxy, its stars rendered as pinpoints of cold fire. Around the edges, alien delegates moved in clusters like schools of fish, each species wearing symbols of rank and tradition. Humans were the only ones without a ceremonial entourage. Elena felt eyes land on her like dust. Curious. Judging. Dismissive. Enwar led them toward a pair of massive doors. They parted soundlessly. Beyond lay the council chamber, a circular hall with tiered seating that rose like a coliseum. Thousands of delegates filled the upper levels, their faces indistinct, their attention sharp. The floor below gleamed dark and reflective, inlaid with gold patterns that formed a spiral converging on a central dais. Elena recognized the space from recordings. She'd watched hearings here, disputes over borders and trade, speeches about unity. None of those films prepared her for the weight of being stared at by an entire galaxy. A voice boomed, amplified from every direction. "Terran representative, step forward." Elena walked alone onto the central floor. The reflective surface caught her silhouette, one human figure in a sea of alien power. On the dais stood High Custodian Sailrun. He was taller than she expected, built like a statue carved from obsidian and bronze. His face was angular, adorned with thin metallic piercings that marked office and lineage. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, like someone had drained warmth from them centuries ago. He regarded Elena with the relaxed certainty of a ruler addressing an inconvenience. "Commander Voss," Sailrun said. The translator rendered his voice as velvet over steel. "You arrive with notable urgency." "I arrived because you took our children." A ripple moved through the chamber, not outrage, not shame. Interest, like spectators settling in for entertainment. Sailrun spread his hands. "Incorrect framing. The Council has assumed guardianship over juveniles deemed at risk." Elena kept her spine straight. "Risk from whom?" Sailrun's eyes didn't blink. "From your species." The words landed with clean cruelty. He didn't insult her. He didn't shout. He simply declared humans a problem, and expected the galaxy to nod. Elena heard Myra Halden's earlier whisper in her mind, "They mean love." She chose her next words carefully. "By what authority do you remove minors from sovereign territory?" Sailrun turned slightly, as if addressing a classroom. "The Protective Custody Clause. Article 9. Ratified after the Caros uprising." Elena knew it. A relic law written after an ancient species had raised soldiers in secret and nearly burned the core. The Council had responded by creating legal permission to preemptively stabilize threats. "So you're calling us an uprising before we've done anything," Elena said. Sailrun's mouth curved in something that wasn't a smile. "You misunderstand. You have already done something." The chamber lights dimmed. A projection formed above the dais, human footage. Frontier militias drilling, warships on patrol, children watching soldiers march during a colony memorial. Ordinary scenes, cut into a narrative of danger. Sailrun's voice remained calm. Humans form attachments that override rational restraint. When threatened, you do not negotiate. You escalate. Elena's fingers twitched once. She forced them still. He continued. "We have observed your historical pattern. When your young are harmed, your civilizations enter phases of total mobilization. You become uncontrollable." A low murmur of agreement flowed through the chamber. Elena lifted her chin. "You're afraid we'll defend them." Sailrun stepped closer to the edge of the dais. "We are preventing the galaxy from paying the price of your instincts." Elena looked up at the tiers of delegates, thousands of beings who spoke of peace while watching a mother argue for her children's return. Where are they? She demanded. Sailrun's gaze sharpened slightly, like someone encountering unexpected persistence. Safe. Safe is a location, Elena said. Give it. Sailrun tapped a clawed finger against the air. A small panel appeared, filled with legal language. Your species is permitted a choice, he said. Compliance will lead to eventual reintegration. Resistance will be interpreted as hostile intent. Elena stared at him. Reintegration after you change them. Sailrun didn't deny it. After they are corrected. The word corrected made something in Elena's chest tighten, a quiet rage that threatened to flood her face. She forced herself to breathe through it. Corrected into what? She asked. Sailrun's tone grew faintly indulgent. Into beings fit to exist without destabilizing the whole. Elena took a slow step forward. We are not your livestock. A ripple of amusement spread. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a delegate laughed, a sharp, clicking sound. Sailrun watched her as one might watch an animal learning it has teeth. This is why we act early, he said. Your defiance arrives faster than your wisdom. Elena's voice dropped. You stole babies. Sailrun's expression remained untroubled. We prevented future war. By starting one. That finally drew a pause. Sailrun leaned forward slightly. Do you believe your fleets can challenge the Council? You are one species, Commander. You are tolerated because you are small. Elena felt the chamber press in around her. All those eyes. All that certainty. And behind it, somewhere in the sphere, a child sleeping in stasis, or crying into a wall that didn't answer. She let the silence stretch long enough to become uncomfortable. Then she spoke, softly, so the translator would have to work harder. You've spent 15,000 years thinking peace means nobody dares to touch you. Sailrun's pale eyes narrowed. Elena's lips barely moved. You've confused silence with consent. Sailrun's voice sharpened a fraction. Be careful. Elena held his gaze. Return the children. Now. A hush fell. Even the distant murmurs quieted, as if the entire chamber leaned closer. Sailrun straightened, regaining his composure. No. The word was final. Casual. As if he'd denied a request for an extra ration. Elena nodded once, slowly, committing the moment to memory. Then she turned and walked away from the dais without permission. Behind her, Sailrun's voice followed like a blade sliding from a sheath. Human Commander, if you attempt to breach the Council's decision, the galaxy will remember your species as the one that shattered peace. Elena paused at the edge of the reflective floor. She didn't look back, but her answer carried cleanly in the chamber. Then the galaxy will also remember why. She left the hall with her delegation trailing behind. The doors sealed with a soft sigh, and the hum of the chamber faded. Only when the corridor swallowed them did Rafik speak. They're confident, he said, voice tight. Too confident. Elena kept walking, her face composed, her blood loud in her ears. They think we're here to beg, she replied. Rafik's eyes searched hers. What are we here to do? Elena stopped at the airlock leading back to the Resolute. The blue lights above it felt colder now. She turned to her team, making sure each of them heard the next words as more than an order, making sure they heard them as a promise. We're here to warn them, she said. Rafik swallowed. Warn them of what? Elena looked back down the corridor, toward the heart of the sphere where children were being corrected. Her voice stayed even, but it was no longer diplomatic. That they just made the only mistake the Council never planned for, she said. They touched our future. The airlock cycled open. Elena stepped onto her ship. And the moment the seal closed behind her, she activated the secure line to Admiral Quan. Admiral, she said, without preamble. They refused. They're holding them in the Aurelium vaults. Integration program. Classified. Quan's voice came back quiet. And their terms? Elena stared at the metal floor beneath her boots, imagining 1,000 small hands on glass. No terms, she answered. Only threats. A pause. Then Quan asked the question that mattered most. Do we still have a peaceful route? Elena's eyes hardened. We have a rescue route, she said. And we have the war vaults. She ended the call and stood very still, letting the last shard of diplomatic hope die cleanly. Because now she knew something for certain. The council believed they'd chosen the safe option. Humanity was about to teach them what safety actually meant. The war vaults were never meant to open. They were buried beneath lunar bedrock, sealed behind layers of authorization codes and old shame. Officially, they did not exist. Unofficially, they were humanity's last confession. The admission that peace was only possible because humans had agreed to restrain themselves. Commander Elena Voss stood inside Vault Chamber 1, the air colder than any hangar she'd ever walked through. Frost clung to steel ribs overhead. The lights came on in stages, revealing shapes hidden in darkness. Ships. Not the sleek patrol cruisers the Protectorate showed the Council. These were older in silhouette, heavier, built like clenched fists. Hulls scarred with dormant weapon ports. Engines designed for pursuit, not diplomacy. Admiral Quan's voice echoed across the chamber. These were mothballed after the Treaty of Aurelia. The Council demanded disarmament. We complied. Elena's eyes traced the nearest vessel's name etched into its flank. UTP Indomitable. Rafik stood beside her, gaze wide. How many? Enough, Quan said. Technicians moved below, waking systems that hadn't breathed in centuries. Power conduits hummed. Dust lifted into the air like ash. Elena felt the weight of what they were doing settle into her spine. This was not conquest. This was retrieval. Quan stepped closer, his face lined with exhaustion. You understand what this means, Commander. Once these ships leave the vaults, the Council will call us aggressors. Elena didn't look away from the Indomitable. They already decided what we are. A sharp voice cut in from the far end of the chamber. And what about what we decide? Councilwoman Myra Halden approached, her civilian coat looking fragile in a place built for war. Her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had lost color. My niece was taken from Larkspur Station, she said. 6 years old. She still sleeps with a stuffed fox. Silence followed her words like a shadow. Myra's eyes shone, furious and wet. If the galaxy wants to call us monsters for going after her, let them. Elena finally turned. We are not monsters. Myra's laugh was brittle. No, we're worse. Quan raised a brow. Worse. Myra stepped forward. We're parents. That landed harder than any threat. Within hours, the Protectorate's hidden infrastructure awakened. Across Terran space, sealed bunkers opened. Ancient factories spun back to life. AI cores long forbidden were brought online under emergency oaths. Humanity did not mobilize with celebration. It mobilized with grim focus. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena watched crew members take their stations. Many were young, born into the era of treaties, raised on the belief that the Council's peace was permanent. Now their hands moved with the urgency of people learning the truth. Rafik approached with a tactical display. Council patrol clusters are forming near the core. They've noticed the war vault activations. Elena's mouth tightened. Of course they have. A communications officer called out, Admiral Quan is on secure channel. Elena accepted. Quan's hologram appeared, his expression unreadable. The Council has issued an ultimatum. Elena's voice was steady. Let me guess. Stand down or be destroyed. Worse, Quan said. They've declared the children wards of the galaxy. Any attempt to retrieve them is classified as kidnapping. Elena's jaw flexed. They stole them first. They don't see it that way. Elena leaned forward. Then we make them see. Quan's gaze sharpened. Commander, once we cross into the core defensive perimeter, there's no undoing this. Elena glanced at the star map hovering above her console. The Aurelium sphere glowed at the center like a jewel surrounded by knives. No, she agreed. There isn't. She ended the call and turned toward the bridge crew. All ships, she ordered. Begin approach. Silent running until engagement range. The Indomitable moved. Behind it, Dozens of awakened vessels followed like ghosts returning from exile. The first council fleet appeared as a wall of silver. Their ships were elegant, almost beautiful, shaped like sweeping fins. Weapons hidden behind smooth hull plating. The kind of design that assumed intimidation would be enough. A council transmission cut through the void, translated instantly. Human vessels. You are in violation of interstellar accord. Power down and submit to escort. Elena stared at the projection of Sailrun's emblem, cold and perfect. She opened a channel. This is Commander Elena Voss, she said. We are here for our children. A pause. Then the council voice replied, faintly amused. Your juveniles are no longer yours. Rafiq's hands curled into fists. Elena's tone did not rise. Move aside. The council response came sharper. Non-compliance will be met with force. Elena's eyes flicked across her crew. Young faces, older ones, all carrying the same contained fury. She spoke softly, almost to herself. They really believe we'll stop. Then she gave the order. Advance. The Indomitable surged forward. Council ships lit up, energy lances charging. The first volley struck the void with blinding arcs of light. Human shields held. Not because humanity were stronger. Because humanity had been preparing for the day peace failed. Return fire, Elena said. Terran cannons spoke. The sound didn't travel in space, but the bridge felt it anyway. The vibration of release, the recoil of history snapping. Council ships faltered, unprepared for human weapons that did not warn, did not posture, only struck with purpose. Rafiq stared at the tactical feed. They're backing off. They expected fear, Elena replied. They got resolve. The battle did not last long. Humans did not chase fleeing ships. They did not gloat. They carved a path. Straight toward the sphere. Council reinforcements poured in, but each wave met the same terrifying reality. Humans weren't here to conquer territory. They were here to reach a vault. Docking alarms blared as Elena's strike team boarded a disabled council carrier near the sphere's outer ring. The corridors inside were pristine, smelling faintly of antiseptic. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just quiet efficiency. Rafiq moved beside her, rifle raised. This place feels like a hospital. Elena's voice was low. Hospitals don't lock children in cages. They advanced through sterile halls until they reached a sealed chamber marked with alien script. Soto's voice crackled over comms. Commander, translation confirms. Juvenile containment bay. Elena's stomach turned. Open it. Explosives cut through the seal with controlled force. The door fell inward. Inside. Rows. Hundreds of pods, stacked like coffins made of glass. Small faces behind frost. Children. Human. Elena froze. For a heartbeat, she was no longer a commander. She was simply a person staring at stolen life. A little boy floated in suspension, his hand curled as if still holding something. A girl with braids pressed against her cheek, eyes closed. Rafiq whispered, voice breaking. Oh God. Elena stepped forward slowly, her gloved fingers touching the pod surface. The glass was cold. A speaker on the wall activated, translating an automated message. Subjects are undergoing corrective integration. Emotional volatility will be reduced. Elena's breath hitched. Corrective. She turned, eyes burning. Find the control systems, she ordered, voice edged with steel. Now. Technicians moved fast, hacking into alien consoles. One of the pods flickered. Then another. A child's eyes fluttered open. Confused. Afraid. The little girl lifted a hand weakly against the glass. Elena leaned closer, her voice suddenly gentle. It's okay, she whispered. We're here. The girl's lips trembled. Mama. The word shattered something deep inside Elena. She swallowed hard, forcing herself not to fall apart. Not your mama, she said softly. But human. And that means you're not alone. Rafiq turned away, wiping his face with his sleeve like he was angry at himself for feeling. A comm crackled. Commander, Quan's voice came through. Council fleets are regrouping. Sail Run is issuing a broadcast. He's calling this an invasion. Elena stared at the rows of children. No, she murmured. This is a rescue. She opened a channel to all Terran ships. This is Voss, she said. We have visual confirmation. The Council is holding our children in stasis. Integration procedures active. Her voice sharpened. We are not leaving without them. The reply from the fleet was not a cheer. It was a single, unified acknowledgement. Understood. Elena looked up toward the distant glow of the Aurelium sphere, its grandeur now nothing but a shell hiding cruelty. The door was open. And humanity had stepped through. The Aurelium sphere burned with lights that had never been meant for war. Its outer rings, once symbols of order, now flashed with emergency beacons. Council ships clustered like frightened insects around a wounded god. Inside, alarms echoed through corridors that had only ever hosted ceremony. High Custodian Sail Run stood at the center of the Council's command sanctum, watching tactical projections fracture into chaos. Human vessels had breached the perimeter. Human boarding teams had reached juvenile vaults. Humanity, small, tolerated humanity, had refused to kneel. An aide, thin-limbed and trembling, approached. Custodian. Terrans are extracting subjects. Sail Run's pale eyes remained steady. Then accelerate containment. The integration protocols. Activate failsafes. The aide froze. Failsafes will terminate the juveniles. Sail Run finally turned his head, expression untouched by discomfort. Peace requires unpleasant decisions. Commander Elena Voss ran. Not in panic, not in fear, but with the relentless momentum of someone who had already sacrificed diplomacy. Her boots struck sterile flooring as her team pushed deeper into the sphere's understructure. Behind them, cargo drones carried stasis pods, children wrapped in frost and fragile hope. Rafik kept pace, breath sharp. We've got 600 extracted. More still inside the central vaults. Elena's voice was clipped. Then we keep moving. A tremor ran through the corridor. Somewhere above, weapons fire rattled the megastructure. Soto's comm crackled. Commander, Council fleets are converging. They're trying to cut off your exit vector. Elena didn't slow. Hold them. Custodian Sail Run has issued a galaxy-wide broadcast, Soto added. He's framing this as human aggression, calling for unified retaliation. Elena's jaw tightened. Let him speak, she said. The truth is behind these doors. They reached a massive sealed gateway, its surface engraved with alien script and gold filaments. Rafik's translator blinked. Elena, he murmured. This is it. Aurelium Vault Prime. The place where the Council kept what it feared most. Elena stared at the door, feeling the weight of thousands of children behind it. Open it, she ordered. Explosives were useless here. The gate was layered with energy locks and biometric authority. Rafik glanced at her. We need custodian clearance. Elena's eyes hardened. Then we take it. They found Sail Run in the sanctum above, surrounded by holograms and silent guards. The chamber was beautiful in the way Glacier were beautiful. Cold, lethal, indifferent. Sail Run turned as Elena entered, as though he had expected her. Commander Voss, he said smoothly. You have committed the act your species was always destined for. Elena lifted her weapon but did not fire. You mean protecting our children? She replied. Sail Run's gaze flicked toward the pods visible through the doorway. Those are not your children anymore. Elena stepped closer. You don't get to decide that. Sail Run's voice carried the weary arrogance of an ancient institution. You are emotional. Predictable. You have proven the Council correct. Look outside, fleets mobilizing, treaties collapsing. All because you could not accept correction. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. All because you kidnapped infants. Sail Run's expression remained composed. Infants become soldiers. Soldiers become uprisings. We ended the chain early. Elena's eyes burned. You ended nothing. You started something you cannot finish. Sail Run leaned forward slightly. Do you believe you can win? You are one species. The galaxy is infinite. Elena's voice lowered, dangerous in its calm. We don't need to win the galaxy. She pointed toward the sanctum's ceiling, beyond which thousands of children slept. We only need to bring them home. Sail Run straightened. Home is irrelevant. Stability is everything. Elena's weapon remained steady. Stability built on stolen children is just tyranny with better lighting. A flicker of irritation crossed Sail Run's face for the first time. You will doom yourselves. Elena took another step. No, she said. We will doom your illusion. Rafik moved fast. In a blur, he slammed a device onto Sail Run's console, an override spike stolen from Council comms. Screens flashed. Locks disengaged. Vault Prime began to open. Sail Run's eyes widened sharply. Stop. Elena fired, not at him, but at the guards' weapons, disabling them with precision. Too late, she said. The gate behind them parted. Inside Vault Prime, the air was colder than space. Rows upon rows of stasis chambers stretched into darkness, each holding a human child suspended in artificial sleep. The scale was obscene. Thousands. Elena's breath caught. Rafik whispered. Broken. They took so many. A small voice crackled through the vault speakers, automated and clinical. Corrective integration at 72% completion. Elena's hands trembled once, then steadied. No, she murmured. Not completion. She turned to her team. Wake them, she ordered. Technicians rushed to consoles. Overrides slammed into alien systems. Pods began to thaw. One by one, children stirred. Confusion became fear. Then recognition. A boy pressed his palms against the glass, eyes wide. Where's my dad? Elena stepped forward, lowering her weapon entirely now. We're getting you back to him, she promised. Behind her, Sail Run's voice rang out, sharp with fury. You cannot undo this. If you remove them, the galaxy burns. Elena turned slowly. If the galaxy burns because parents refuse to surrender their children. Her eyes locked onto his. Then maybe it deserves to. Sail Run's mouth twisted. You are proving why you must be contained. Elena's voice did not rise. We are proving why we will never be contained. Outside, the battle reached its peak. Council fleets surrounded the sphere, weapons charged for annihilation. Terran ships held formation, shields flaring, refusing to retreat. Admiral Kwan's voice carried across every channel. Humanity could be underestimated. But humanity could never be separated from its children again. All vessels, priority is extraction. Do not pursue. Do not punish. Hold the line. Humans fought with terrifying restraint. Not out of mercy for the Council, but because every second mattered more than revenge. The last pod opened. A little girl stumbled forward, shivering, eyes searching. Elena knelt instantly, meeting her at eye level. The girl's voice was small. Are you human? Elena's throat tightened. Yes, she whispered. I am. The child's lip trembled. They said humans were dangerous. Elena reached out carefully, wrapping her arms around the girl. We are, she admitted softly. But only to those who try to take what we love. The girl clung to her like gravity. Sail Run watched the scene, something unreadable behind his pale gaze. This changes nothing, he said coldly. The Council will rebuild. Peace will return. Elena stood, holding the child close. No, she replied. Your peace was never peace. She stepped toward him, voice carrying the weight of every stolen cradle. You built an empire of quiet fear. Sail Run's posture stiffened. Elena's final words were not a threat. They were a verdict. And humanity just reminded the galaxy. She looked down at the child in her arms. That the future cannot be seized. The Aurelium sphere did not fall in flames. It fell in shame. Across the galaxy, species watched the broadcasts, Human soldiers carrying children, not trophies. Human fleets withdrawing the moment the last pod was safe. No conquest. Only retrieval. And for the first time in 15,000 years, the Council's authority cracked, not from war, but from devotion. Elena stood aboard the Indomitable as the fleet jumped home. In her arms, a rescued child slept peacefully. Rafik approached quietly. "It's over," he said. Elena stared into the stars. "It's only beginning," she answered. Because the galaxy had learned something irreversible. Humanity could be ignored.